Warning, you will be terrified. Or at least moderately creeped out. Stasis, Bone Totem. Exploring the underwater research facility is like exploring the mind of the insane, with details of the former researchers' lives as you read their notes they left behind. The many days of panic gradually wearing on them and ultimately snapping, if something hadn't gotten to them first. It's immediately evident that you may share their fate unless you leave immediately. But the pain in your hearts from the loss of your child, as well as the desperate need for a payday, makes you press on until it's too late to turn back. Stasis Bone Totem has its share of jump scares and gruesome death scenes, but it's the fear-inducing atmosphere, sharing confined spaces with the dead, and the masterful ramp-up in tension that keeps you moving forward in hopes to get out as fast as possible. This is a good time to tell you that we limit ourselves to choosing one game per series in this video. But if you like a good isometric horror game, we also recommend you playing the first game in the Stasis series. The same can be said for many of the other games going forward. Phantasmagoria, a puzzle of the flesh. While the original Phantasmagoria had its share of horror, it had its rough edges and it relied on enough gore to make Wes Craven blush. A sequel improved on all of those areas and focused more on the telling of a psychological thriller. In A Puzzle of the Flesh, you play as Curtis Craig, a nondescript, cubicle-working introvert whose best friend is his pet rat Blob. An unexplained murder at his office has everyone nervous, and that's before Craig begins experiencing disturbing flashbacks to his forgotten childhood. When his computer starts antagonizing him, Craig's grip on reality deteriorates as he questions his choices and his sanity. AGH network partner Paul Morgan Stetler does a fantastic job in front of the green screen, his non-verbal reactions matching the horror that he's facing. The subject matter is quite heavy, with prominent themes of S&M and child abuse, but there's a tongue-in-cheek camp running throughout to lighten things up just enough to keep them from being overwhelming. Sure, the ending's a bit overwrought, but the ride is sick fun if you turn your brain off and enjoy it. The Room VR, a Dark Matter. The Room VR, Dark Matter, is the fifth of the series, but the first to be played in VR. Continuing the tradition of tactical puzzle boxes and tricky escape rooms wrapped up in a gothic supernatural story and atmosphere. This game is not exactly terrifying, nor will it make you drop your VR headset and run due to jump scares, but it's got a darkness and a constant sense of horror that in the VR exists all around you. You'll explore each puzzle room, and an aura of loneliness and dread will envelop you, making you completely forget you're in your living room with a box on your head, and not really in a kaleidoscopic dimensional rift of infinite unknowability where the mysterious null is both your only salvation and also your doom. Layers of Fear.
Do you like dark hallways, creepy noises, strange paintings? Then Layers of Fear might be the game for you. The way I would describe the general gameplay of Layers of Fear is that you go down some shadowy hallways, enter a room, spooky things happen, you turn to leave, and the hallway is different, almost like the house is constantly churning and turning in on itself. The plot is almost besides the point. In fact, I found the constant jump scares to be more exhausting than scary. It wasn't necessarily the perfect game for me, but if you are into jump scare type games, this is probably the title for you.
The Last Door, Season 1. The Last Door, Season 1, explores a decades-long mystery behind a secret society hell-bent on crossing the veil, a realm that can only be reached by those who enter a higher state of consciousness. Jeremiah must re-examine his own past to determine the truth about his role in the organization. The low-resolution pixel graphics combine with the extremely moody sound design to create a terrifying game that leaves loads to the imagination in a way that you just can't put down. And for those who get through its 4 potent episodes clamoring for more, there's good news. Season 2 is just as great. Visage. Visage has a similar setting and gameplay to its spiritual predecessor, PT. The game takes place in a large suburban home in the 1980s. You are Dwayne Anderson, trapped inside the house and being tormented by supernatural entities. The objective of the game is to find a way out of the house and to learn more about the cause of all the odd things happening. Light? You wish you had light. Really, you wish you had anything, because unlike many adventure games, your inventory is limited. Sanity? You'll wish you had that too. Truly. It's part of the gameplay. The more you lose, the harsher the scares will be. Visage understands the human psyche, and it really challenges it along the way. How long can you play before you tap out? The Quarry. Supermassive did it again in a long line of incredible thrillers. The Quarry has everything you like in a camp scare horror film, blended into an atmospheric game. The production values are impressive, and the cast of Hollywood talent, including some veterans of the horror scene, are noteworthy. A remote summer camp freshly emptied of its campers, a deep deer lake surrounding an eerie island, a police officer who displays irrational violent tendencies, the camp's owner insisting that nobody leaves the relative safety of the camp lodge once night settles in. Let's go. This is a tried and true formula that you will no doubt enjoy, you masochist. Someday you'll return. CBE's Someday You'll Return is a walk in the park. If the park were the contemporary Moravian woods of the Czech Republic that are slowly being perverted by dark forces that may or may not all be the endangered psyche of the game's anti-hero protagonist Daniel, who's there looking for his runaway daughter. The search takes players through an immersive natural landscapes and a claustrophobic series of bunker tunnels, to the ruins of a castle even. Space and time begin to lose meaning as his cell phone accumulates days' worth of messages in a matter of hours, and you've got a monster after you. The game provides moments of calm, but even these moments have you waiting in expectant horror. Is it real, or is it all in your mind? I'll never tell. The Dark Eye. If you weren't a little crazy before starting to play The Dark Eye, you will be by the time you finished. Spoiler alert, the end of the game, you become crazy. You're pointing and clicking inside the mind of Edgar Allan Poe, recreating some of the best stories. The Dark Eye is known for its disturbing visuals and creepy soundtrack that would make Poe proud. If you insist on playing this game, and I highly recommend it, make sure you keep the light on. Oh, and can you tell Uncle Edwin that it wasn't my fault?
Blood was its avatar.
Miasmata. Miasmata is one of the most memorably eerie adventure games that you will ever play. Stranded on an uncharted island, suffering from an unknown disease and stalked by a relentless monster, players are essentially thrown to the wolves and left to fend for themselves. Most adventure games feature a mix of exploration and puzzle solving, but few achieve what Miasmata does, making exploration itself a puzzle, in the form of cartography system that requires you to use triangulation and add landmarks to your map. Most of the game involves navigating the island in order to synthesize a cure for your illness from the local flora, all while staying hidden from the dreaded creature. It's bewildering, fascinating, very much terrifying, and is strongly recommended by the AGH staff. Shadows of the Comet. You've heard the term Lovecraftian thrown about when it comes to horror games and books in the past, and you're gonna get it again in this one with Shadows of the Comet. You are a turn-of-the-century photographer who goes to a small town in hopes of capturing a picture of Halley's Comet, and you end up getting more than you'd hoped for. You have to stay alive while solving an ancient mystery that the town insists stay hidden. While not particularly scary, Shadows of the Comet will keep you on edge, if not for the game, but for the gameplay. Get used to hugging the keyboard because it was launched without the use of a mouse. It was re-released shortly afterwards with what was supposed to be a better interface, but I'm not so sure that's true. This is one game that would truly benefit from a remaster, but as currently constituted, it's still considered one of the best adventures of all time.
So young and already in the next world.
Silent Hill, Shattered Memories. Harry Mason is looking for his missing daughter after they suffer a car accident in a snowstorm. Lots of fathers searching for their daughters on this list. The game switches between views of the therapist office and a largely deserted town. The answers you give to the therapist are used to shape Silent Hill and its characters, with subtle details altered to fit your psychological profile. All you have is a flashlight, giving you a true feeling of isolation, with sudden sounds feeding your imagination. Now here's the kicker. You're not in any danger. You're free to investigate the creepy environment at your will. Until, at key points, the monster pops out and starts chasing you with no means to defend yourself. How are your nerves? I hope they hold up. Until Dawn. This slasher delights in hitting all of the slasher tropes. Led by Hollywood talent like Hayden Panettiere and Remy Malek, the game follows a group of teens around their posh and isolated mountain retreat, where things soon begin to go awry. Of course it does. A killer begins to stalk the group in and around the lodge, while a presence in the basement dials up an element and applies pressure from a different angle. There's also a menacing figure equipped with a flamethrower out in the snowy woods, and none of this even scratches the surface of the nearby abandoned sanitarium, or a tragic accident that claimed the lives of a group of miners years ago, and the sounds that are now coming out of the supposedly empty mine. You've nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. 5 Days a Stranger.
Hi everyone, this is Shorta Dunbar from the Adventure Games Podcast. I hope everyone is well. 5 Days a Stranger. This is one of the creepiest games that I have ever played. Now this game doesn't rely on gore or jump scares, although there are a couple of those throughout this game. But it builds up the atmosphere, it builds up the tension and the suspense right from the very beginning. And it becomes unbearable at times, but the quality of the writing is also absolutely fantastic. It stands out compared to plenty of other games, and it's also free, which is shocking, because I would happily pay for this game. And ultimately it was one of the scariest games that I've ever played in my life, so I would highly recommend this game. The game again is 5 Days a Stranger, and it's a perfect game to play.
Anchorhead. Anchorhead is, simply put, one of the most chilling adventure games ever made. It's a chilling story about a woman moving into a New England home that her husband inherited. When her husband starts acting strangely and eventually disappears, she's left with little choice but to reach out to the town's guarded citizens and research the history of the town. Like any great horror novel, the tension is gradually built even before the real danger begins. Once you escape from an angry mob, nearly every step you take could be your last as you try to avoid traps and other townsfolk. The highly recommended 20th Anniversary Edition, released in 2018 and available on Steam, cleans up some of the original text-only game and even includes some graphics, though the fact remains that what you can't see is even more frightening than what you can. Darkfall, the journal.
Well, I've already done a video on Darkfall the Journal, so here's the 60-second version. Darkfall was released in 2002 and developed by XSV Productions, which basically consists of the one and only Jonathan Boakes, who I mentioned before as being involved in Barrow Hill as well as voice acting in one of the Quarry mysteries. Despite its limitations, this is an impressive debut for Boakes, who succeeds in creating a genuinely creepy atmosphere similar to that of Silent Hill, except without the fog. You receive a call from your brother who's staying at an abandoned train station hotel in Dowson, Dorset, but he's not alone. Because this place is devoid of living souls to interact with, the story is mainly played out through reading all the scraps of paper, books, and documents you find scattered around. So if you don't like reading, this game is probably not for you. In one corner of the attic, there's a Ouija board that we can use to contact the Beyond for help. If that wasn't enough supernatural activity, we also witness energy balls flying and opening doors by themselves. Flying around and opening doors by themselves. A shadowy figure in the toilet, and even a ghost train that goes by sometimes. So how do we find the Darkfall? Well, first we have to get past the 3 trials. 3 trials, where have I heard that before? Oh, that's right, the Secret of Monkey Island. Gotta review that sometime. If only I had a 3-headed monkey!
At dead of night.
Just your typical backpacking trip, all alone in a secluded hotel. And a storm's kicking in.
The creepy proprietor, Jimmy, insists that you, Maya, come watch a one-man comedy routine. This could be a horror story all on its own, but both the proprietor and the Seaview Hotel have darker secrets hidden within. Jimmy's alter ego, the murderous Hugo Punch, chases Maya around the dark halls of the creepy hotel while she embarks on the hunt to unravel Jimmy's terrible past. The first-person perspective effectively pulls you into Maya's terror as you hear her breath and wince at the creak of the floorboards. You hear Hugo off in the far corners, taunting you, growing closer. If he catches you, the violent jump scare awaiting you will have you leaping from your seat. At Dead of Night has its flaws, but the visuals, the performances, the sense of tension, and the truly disturbing stories of the Seaview will leave you with fright so bad that you'll think twice about staying in a hotel ever again. The Cat Lady. The cats come when she plays her piano. They come and surround Susan Ashworth in all of her despair, all of her loneliness as she contemplates ending her life. With deliberately rudimentary graphics, the game immediately throws you into the terror with brilliant sound work, imagery, and writing. You awaken from a failed suicide attempt. The sounds of death set against the backdrop of screaming music almost dare you onward, despite knowing nothing good will be waiting for you.
Someone could be getting murdered 2 feet away, and not a soul would notice.
The deviousness of the game is that it knows when to break up the unrelenting torment with quiet moments of peace and serenity, which of course only serve to increase the apprehension of returning to nightmares when it's time to resume.
Well, look what the cat dragged in.
The dark exploration of attempting to live with depression may have you clutching your computer mouse in terror one moment and then holding back tears of sadness the next. It's a gory and bleak but beautiful and thought-provoking game. Scratches.
Just how scary can a game really be when there's no real chance of death or suffering some other bad fate? Play Scratches and find out.
You're a novelist seeking to write a story about the large abandoned manor that should provide just the sort of spooky seclusion and horror that you need for inspiration. However, you find a horrifying mystery surrounding the previous owners, and why the game's titular scratches can be heard reverberating through the fireplaces at night. Scratches features simple first-person gameplay and doesn't have many huge scares, but the game serves up an unceasing atmosphere of doom from beginning to end that will stick with you in a way that no other adventure game has yet reached. Or, well, maybe one. Number 1. Amnesia, The Dark Descent.
Do you like to be scared? Scared to death? Then
Oh, frog in my throat there. Sorry about that. What I was saying was, if you love to be scared, then you must play Amnesia: The Dark Descent by Frictional Games. It's over 10 years old, but it is still our choice for the scariest horror adventure ever made. At least where somebody isn't trying to kill you all the time. Although they are trying to kill you some of the time. And that's part of the fear. You're in an old, creepy castle, and there's creaks and groans and screams and cries all around you. Like, you're already on edge. But there are actually some terrifying monsters lurking in the dark. And there is so much darkness in this game. It's called The Dark Descent. They weren't kidding. The problem is, you're terrified of the dark, which makes you go insane if you spend too long in it. So you have to create your own light sources, and that of course draws monsters, and then all hell breaks loose. But it's just so much fun. There are lots of puzzles to solve in between running for your life and hiding and creeping and freaking yourself out. It's just an amazing game overall. So if you haven't played it, do yourself a favor, give it a try.
Thanks for watching. Now go start your horrific adventure. I dare ya.